You are listening to First Talk on WHKY Talk Radio for the Greater Hickory Metro. Rob Eastwood filling in for Hal Rowe. Hal is off today. He'll be back tomorrow. And it is time for Chamber Chat. And we are always pleased to be joined by folks from the Catawba County Chamber. Lindsay Keisler, the president of the Chamber. And we're also joined by Zack Cranford. And we're going to talk about, I think, something that sounds awesome, a foundation that sounds awesome. But Lindsay, good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you, Rob. Thanks for having us.
When you told me that your youngest child was 7 years old, and I remember when you became president of the Chamber, you were pregnant.
Yes.
And I still have vivid memories of that luncheon, because I went up to Lindsay and I was covering it for the station, and I said, for TV and for radio, and I said, you need to give me a heads up on who the new president's going to be. And
yeah, because it was a surprise.
It was a surprise. Yeah, no,
yes.
Of course you knew.
They hadn't announced, and I knew. And
and you said, I promise. And I said, I want to talk to them too. You said, I
promise
that'll happen.
I will make that happen, Rob. I can make that happen.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, so great.
Anyway, it's great to see both of you. And Lindsay, I'll let you get started on Chamber Chat today. What would you like to talk about?
So again, we always appreciate the opportunity that WHKY gives us to come in every month and talk about some of the great things that are occurring with your chamber. This morning, we get to officially talk about our foundation. So the Catawba County Chamber Foundation, it's a 501c organization, and it's a C3 actually. So this was founded officially in 2023 after a period of due diligence. The traditional chamber is a 501c6 entity. So by the IRS, it's categorized as a business league or association. This foundation is a private foundation, 501c3 entity. So individuals that contribute to the foundation can write off their contribution as a charitable contribution. Versus the chamber, you can write it off as a business expense.
See, I learned something. I had never heard of a C6, so that's something new. I'd always heard C3 for the charitable foundation. So you are a C3.
Yes. So the foundation arm of the chamber is the C. We were looking at how we can continue to lean in and impact this community economically for a positive trajectory, as well as impacting business. We said, what are some ways that we can accomplish that? Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, we felt like we needed to diversify our revenue streams in that. And so the foundation gives us the ability to not only access business contributions or individual contributions, but also will allow us to lean in and potentially look at grant funding from private foundations or corporate foundations to help amplify our work that will continue towards economic transformation and growth in this community.
And that is the goal, obviously, of the chamber to do that. And
That's right.
So where do you reach out? Who do you reach out to in order to do this?
So the foundation in particular is a sister entity of the chamber. And so it's a completely separate organization, completely separate board, which actually Zack Cranford, that's with me this morning, serves as the chair of the foundation board. So the board is completely separate, but they are strategically aligned. And so the strategic priorities of the chamber in talent attraction, development and retention, also business success, advocacy and leadership, the work of the foundation is intertwined with that, but also has a uniquely separate mission and vision. And we'll get into that here shortly, I imagine.
Okay. And I guess we should welcome Zack into the studio.
That'd be great.
Zack Cranford, welcome. So Zack, talk a little bit about the foundation. How did you get involved with this?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to serve originally on the chamber board. I believe it was 20. It was our first meeting was in person, and then the world shut down, and we went through all those wild dynamics. And I've been on the board with them, and last year I got to serve as the board chair for the traditional board for the chamber, and then this year I transitioned into the role of the foundation chair.
Did you have a role in creating this foundation?
I did play a part in that. There were several folks on the board and folks on the committee that really put a big effort. I want to give credit to Lori Alala. Also, who am I thinking of that did the...
So Lori was the founding chair of the entity, and I think you're Philip Moore chaired the task force for due diligence when we were exploring establishing the C3.
One thing that Philip did, he did a lot of investigation. He said, this is what other chambers that are doing. And, of course, I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting here with Lindsay, but our chamber makes a difference. They are forward moving always. And we were looking at how can we be a better chamber? How can we be a better chamber that serves our business community better?
Right.
And one of the things that we found out was this foundation is a real game changer. It gives some opportunities for the community that we didn't have before and that we're getting ready to have.
Okay, do you want to go over some of those opportunities? I guess maybe make the distinction. You said you served on the board for the chamber, and now this is a little bit different. Talk about the distinction and what kind of opportunities that this can create.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that period, we found out that the public and private, when they work together, there's just a stronger community, there's a stronger embracing. And what we're trying to do, this is really led by the business community because that's our focus, but we also want to work with our public sector as well.
Right.
So we were looking at a statement project, and we'll get into this here in a little bit, but our statement project has really been a workforce scan. It revolved around, if you ask any business leader in our community what their biggest struggle is, it's jobs. It's having people, I believe there's a quote there, it's always been about not having the jobs. Now we've got the jobs, it's not having the workers.
Right. It's flipped, hasn't it?
Yes, it sure has. So our core mission, I think, right now, and core focus is about how do we make our community more attractive for the business community? How do we attract new talent to come in? How do we keep talent from coming out of our town and going somewhere else?
Right.
That's kind of what our focus has been lately.
Zack is a very well-respected business leader in our community. Zack has done some incredible things. His investment with Cranford Hospitality, alongside his family,
right?
They've invested and they've continued to invest. And really, I'd love to hear Zack's perception around, being a business leader in this community. You have you started here, but you've continued to invest here. What about this community was attractive for you to be able to continue to make those investments that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay. So I may be a little biased because I grew up here and I want to see it do well.
Right.
But, we started out as a small single family restaurant. Over time, we've kind of pegged away and grew into what we are now. And one of the things our family did, we want to make our community better just on where we live. We want to have a place that people are proud to work, people are proud to enjoy. And so we made a commitment a long time ago to continually invest in our community, to put a footprint or leave a footprint on it. And that's just kind of what we've done. We haven't really looked going to other cities or areas just because we love Hickory, we love Catawba County, we love being here, and we want it to be vibrant.
And now I would imagine that can be a key for a business surviving long term, is that connecting to that community.
That's right. And I think, Rob, that goes hand in hand. Exactly what Zack stated. It goes hand in hand with the work of the foundation. So
right.
The foundation, what their original charge from the chamber board was to create a long-term or a platform or a medium, if you will, for business leaders, government leaders, education leaders, nonprofit leaders to come together, right? More of a neutral medium to come together to be able to look forward, cast a vision forward for this community. What are those things we need to address in order to continue to prosper economically?
And one of the topics that came up during our last segment was the fact right now, and this is probably just nationwide, there are more jobs available than workers that want those jobs. So I know you wanted to sort of segue that into some of what you are all doing. And Lindsay, I'll let you continue on.
Sure, Rob, you're right. And having available and qualified talent is arguably the number one economic competitiveness issue that all communities have to face or are facing. And it's the question that all communities have to answer in the future if we want to continue to grow and also continue to satisfy current need, but also future need for our businesses when it comes to available those individuals that have the right skills and will come to work every day. And so that is the number one, that's the issue that we've been grappling with the foundation. Zack mentioned that all between the public sector, the private sector, nonprofit sector, we're all looking at solutions around how we develop our homegrown talent.
Right.
And also, the second bucket is how we continue to attract the right talent here so that they can see that we're a great place to live, great place to raise a family, great place to come and learn. And so, one of two ways, homegrown talent, developing those that are coming up through our education system, or those that are already here. Maybe they want to change jobs and need the skills to be able to step into a different career.
Right.
Or that second bucket is, how are we going to continue to be that talent magnet, attract the right talent from those that don't currently live here to relocate to our community. And so several ways that we've done that. So we're taking an incremental step. And remember, our ultimate goal is to create a comprehensive strategy around this very issue, around talent, and how our community is going to address it, both from, what's the private sector's role, what's the public sector's role, what are our nonprofit community's role, what's our education institutions, what's their role in that equation. But we're taking an incremental approach. We're trying to use data to understand a little bit more about our talent landscape, how we kind of rank against other competitive communities. And then we've even taken it a step further to truly identify what are the talent priorities specifically for the private sector.
Okay.
So that first part, kind of part A, was a workforce scan. And Zack mentioned this earlier, using data. So we engaged with a consultant that came in and took data from many different sources, both locally, also national databases, and then said, all right, here's Catawba County's talent profile. Now let's see again how we rank against other competitive communities across the state or across the Southeast.
Okay.
And so we selected several of those communities where we could say, all right, how do our demographics match up? How do our migration trends match up? How do we match up economically with the jobs that we have available, the wage rates that we have available? How do we match up against other communities that are either immediate competition for talent or even more aspirational in how their growth rates and the other things that they have to offer?
And you mentioned the workforce scan. How comprehensive has it been for you? How much work, Zach, have you had to do as far as this is concerned? Is this just research? How do you do it?
Yeah, so that consultant came in. They met with several folks on our board, several folks on our steering committee that are led by the business, and asked tough questions, explained what we're trying to do, and really gave a lot of great data. If I was to point to a few of the points, I think some of them are fairly obvious, some of them maybe not so much. We have an older area, and age dynamics are important. We really found that out. The workforce is aging, they're likely to retire. And this isn't necessarily an issue that's just in our area. This is, a nationwide. Being manufacturing heavy, I think, relies on that. So a lot of folks had been with this same company or same industry for a long time. So how are we going to kind of backfill those jobs? Mm-hmm. That was something that was, not eye-opening by any stretch, but certainly cautious.
Right.
Certainly gave some concern. But, another thing that we saw on this workforce was that certain areas were attracting certain people that we didn't already have. That knowledge worker, that one that's working from home.
Right.
We didn't capture a lot of those folks.
Okay.
But from a quality of life, from a quality of support in the economy, they may come here and work at home, but they also come to our businesses. They spend their money within the community at restaurants, retail. We're missing out on those customers, and how do we capture those?
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, Lindsay, is you mentioned to me when we were chatting off the air that a lot of people think that this whole situation that we're in now, where there are more jobs than workers, was a consequence of COVID. But you told me that it actually started before COVID. This is a trend that was already developing.
Yes, the pandemic certainly accelerated what was already occurring.
Right.
We saw that during the pandemic, more people retired than typically retire.
Right.
And, you're also seeing decline in birth rates across the nation, really across the world.
Right.
And so a lot of these trends we're seeing, and they're materializing in having not enough workers and more jobs available. But we've got to address that. That's, as a community, our business community has said, we're not just going to sit back and allow this to continue to occur. We're going to roll up our sleeves and work together to determine how we can impact that trajectory for the future.
Okay.
And then part two with this, there's a whole data report. Zack scratched the surface. He pulled out some really great facts that we learned, but there's so much more that's embedded in that report. the last project, which is actually ongoing now, so I don't have a whole lot to share, and maybe we can come back and share more of the details when that becomes available, was a talent priorities identification process.
Okay.
So taking on that quantitative data and adding some stakeholder insight to it. So some voice of customers, really interviewing the business leaders across this community and helping us understand what are their priorities around talent attraction, retention, and development.
Okay.
And so we used that same consultant. We worked with them again, and they pulled together focus groups. So we had 4 industry-specific focus groups. We also had several one-on-one interviews. They interviewed all of the leadership of our K-12 systems, also leadership of K-64, our universities, as well as our community college, and curated all of that data into some key priorities that we needed to address. So what kind of rose to the top when it comes to priorities?
Right.
And that's specifically around those 2 buckets. Homegrown talent, how are we developing the next generation of talent that will go into the workforce, or how are we retooling those that are already working? And then that second bucket that I mentioned earlier is how are we attracting the right talent here? How are we bringing people into our community to fill roles now and in the future?
Okay.
That process has been led by a steering committee. Zack's a part of that as well, in addition to 19 other leaders across our community in various sectors and size businesses. And so that final report will be available over the next 30 days.
How can folks learn more about the Chamber?
Yes, so I encourage you, if you want to learn more about the foundation, maybe you're interested in engaging in the foundation work, go to CatawbaChamber.org, and we have a page on our website now that's specific to the work of the Catawba County Chamber Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay Keisler. Zack Cranford, we appreciate you coming into the studio for Chamber Chat.